Hello, and welcome to the Pit Strategy Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff.
And I am Matt.
And we want to welcome you to episode 8 of our podcast as we are covering and recapping the Chinese Grand Prix at Shanghai.
It was a good race.
It was a great race.
Very entertaining.
Honestly, qualifying in the sprint was as much fun as the actual Grand Prix itself.
There's a lot more, nail-biting moments, I think. I think the rain had a lot to do with that.
Yes, the crazy weather patterns out there definitely made a huge difference.
Yeah. But overall, yeah, definitely. Again, very predictable ending. But the midfield was probably the one of the more entertaining races we've had this year.
I'd agree. It was definitely a shake-up in the mid-pack from what we've seen in previous years.
It was a shake-up, yeah.
And it was good to see Lando Norris in P2 over there. Definitely good to see him back on a podium after a while. It's been been a minute.
And he didn't break the trophy this time.
Didn't break the trophy, which is always a good thing. I'm sure Max appreciated that.
I'm sure he did, yeah. I'm sure the Chinese government also appreciated that.
Does the Chinese government appreciate anything?
Yeah, they appreciate some things, yeah.
If they do, they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Or use it for propaganda purposes, one or the other. But we'll get into the Chinese Grand Prix here in a minute. Let's start off with the dispatch. News around the calendar, news around the F1 circuit, and I guess the biggest one is with Alonso signing his contract extension at Aston Martin. Seems like the Mercedes garage has had to go bump up a rookie and let him take a few laps in W14, their previous year's car.
Yes, so Kimi Antonelli did a test drive at their, I believe it was their Silverstone facility. Now, this is in no way a confirmation of signing him per se.
Right.
But it does kind of
go along with what Will Buxton was saying about Mercedes wanting to call him up.
Right.
So, yeah, again, this is confirming absolutely nothing, but it's looking very likely that Kimi might be the next Mercedes driver.
I think as far as rookies goes, and we've discussed this in the past, he's definitely the leading contender for that seat as far as rookies, because it's him, Fittipaldi, and Mick Schumacher, basically, and definitely Antonelli's had the better track record of the three of those.
Right. Williams also has their fair share of junior drivers that are waiting in the wings, but none of them really compare to somebody as hot as Antonelli is right now.
Right. Yeah. Definitely in their own driver academy, and I think, like you were saying, putting them behind the wheel of an actual recent era F1 car and letting him take a few laps around a track is definitely the best way to benchmark it. So
yes.
Until we hear something from Toto and company, I don't think anything will be confirmed, but it's definitely a peek behind the curtain at what they're thinking about.
Right. Yeah. It's a I don't want to say a sneak peek per se, but it's looking like that. It's hinting towards what direction they're going to move forward with.
Yeah, I think they were maybe hoping signs would definitely look their way, but based on all accounts, it seems like Audi's made him an offer he can't refuse. And
yeah, it's honestly, if I were Carlos, I wouldn't be looking at this Mercedes team personally. Right. I mean, you could do better.
Well, what was it? Christian Horner said in the press yesterday that Mercedes is falling behind their customer teams and all the teams that are using the Mercedes power plant.
Yeah.
And so he needs to stop looking at the driver market and start paying attention to his own car.
Yeah, I mean, change your freaking car.
Right. Well, there's a meme about this somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere.
No, I agree. I think it's definitely going to be a sign of things to come for Mercedes. It doesn't seem like they have any other option at this point.
Yeah, I mean, between that and, like we were saying, calling up some other junior driver or Mick Schumacher. I mean, like we said before last time, anything is going to be cheaper than Lewis.
Right.
But you might as well get the most for your money.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it just seems like Antonelli is the right choice there.
Yep, I would agree. I think that's definitely the way it's going to go. Other than that, the only other real big headline was coming out of the McLaren universe over there in Woking. They signed Formula 2 champion and current Sauber reserve driver Teo Pourchaire to McLaren Aero IndyCar.
Yeah.
Gave him a seat over there.
And he had his first stint, didn't he?
I believe so this weekend. I haven't watched it, but by all accounts, he did well. Definitely lived up to whatever potential McLaren saw in him. So that's definitely a good start for him. I'm glad to see him getting some track time. I coming into this season, I really expected him to get a seat.
Yeah, I think so. I think quite a few people did.
I think a lot of people did, and because he's an F2 champion, and there's plenty of F2 champions that got bumped up real quick, and I kind of expected Sauber to part ways with Joe or something like that and put him into that seat. But he's just been over there collecting dust in the Sauber garage.
Yeah. I agree. It's good to see him on track, getting more exposure. Hopefully, this will propel him forward somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
not at least as an IndyCar champion,
Get him some more exposure, get some more F1 teams looking his way.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if other teams enter the market and are looking for drivers. He's definitely, being a reigning F2 champion looks good on a resume.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I look forward to seeing what he's gonna do, not just with McLaren, but just in the racing scene altogether. He seems like a really cool guy.
Yeah,
definitely don't want to see him get forgotten.
Agreed. Yeah, best of luck to Teo.
Yep, for sure. All right, so let's kick it off in the debrief. Chinese Grand Prix at Shanghai. Starting off, what was your biggest takeaway from the whole weekend?
The whole weekend?
Yeah, top moment for you in the weekend.
Top moment, probably the safety car incident
in the Grand Prix itself.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, which we can talk a little more about later, but I was pulling my hair out from that.
That could have been handled a whole lot better.
There's no worse way that could have been.
Yeah. We'll cover things in order. We'll get to that in a second. But I definitely agree with you. That's up there. But for me, mine was the sprint qualifying in the rain.
Yeah.
Especially the end with Lando's time getting deleted, Hamilton just absolutely killing it.
Right.
And then Lando's time getting reinstated and putting him on pole.
Yeah, I mean, what else is F1 what are they trying to do to Lewis at this point?
That poor man, he's going to be in good company with Ferrari and Leclerc going to therapy.
Maybe that's what they're doing. They're warming him up for the Ferrari experience.
This is the Ferrari acclimation period where you go ahead and book yourself into therapy.
This is his probationary period as a Ferrari employee.
It's terrible. No, let's start with the sprint race.
Yeah.
Quali started out in the dry. I think round one of the sprint quali or sprint shootout they call it was in the dry.
Yeah.
But by rounds 2 and 3, it was a downpour.
It was wet.
I don't know why nobody went up there on wets. Everybody was on intermediates, and it looked terrible.
I guess they just had their hopes up. I don't know.
Hoping
Maybe they just don't want to rely on the wets on that particular track. They didn't trust it with the new pavement that was on there.
I guess.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a mess. You'd have had better luck on a jet ski than you would have
For real.
slick tires out there because it was just horrible. But then Hamilton took a provisional pole.
Yep.
Because on turn 14, the last turn down the main straight, he whiffed it into the gravel a little bit, got out on track limits, and so they deleted his time. But then after quali was completed, they reinstated the time.
Right.
And gave pole back to Lando, which is just kind of surprising. I mean, I understand why, the steward's reasoning made sense, but it just seemed like, I don't know, they decided they were going to walk it back after Hamilton took pole. It almost seemed personal.
They're either right and inconsistent about it, or they're wrong and consistent about it.
I know.
Please break this cycle.
Yeah, the FIA. There is no good standard there. It seems. It seems
it almost seems like there's no standard sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, luck of the draw with those stewards and the race control guys.
Right. Yeah.
It can be literally anything in there. But yeah, no. The sprint race was definitely enjoyable.
I gotta wonder
how quickly the McLaren fans turned their TVs off.
Yeah. The actual sprint, Lando went into turn 1 and just completely went wide.
He tried to hang with Lewis on the outside and just could not maintain grip.
Yep, couldn't hold it.
Yeah.
Couldn't maintain it.
Went off track, fell back to P7, I believe.
That sounds right. Yeah, him and Piastri were both pretty far back.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of disappointing, but Lewis managed to hold P2.
Yeah,
through that.
He hung at a P1 till lap 8 or 9.
And then,
and of course, Max starting out complaining about a flat battery. They just had him change to a different racing mode, and then that was all she wrote.
Yep, he hit that back straight and had all of that power suddenly, and there was no stopping it. Those Mercedes power units could not keep up with the Red Bull.
No, they could not. Max finished with, I think, 13 seconds to spare, something crazy like that.
Yeah, it was like chasing a rocket ship. There was no hope for for anybody else in that grid,
No.
which is kind of disappointing. I seriously hope the weather was like maybe even it out a little bit, like give some of the lower mid-pack teams like a fighting chance.
Yeah.
But it dried out for the sprint for the most part. I mean, the track was still a little damp, but it wasn't bad. And there was nothing they could do. The straight line speed of the Mercedes power units on that back straight just couldn't keep up.
It's just
with,
not there.
Yeah, it just wasn't there. They couldn't. I mean, Lewis, like I said, Lewis held P2, which was really more a credit to his racecraft of defending than it was,
I agree.
the car he was in.
Yeah.
But yeah, the rest of them couldn't keep up with the Red Bulls and the Ferraris. It was kind of a disappointment for the back half of that.
Then of course we have Fernando Alonso
Yes.
fighting like a dog for P3.
Oh my goodness, that P3 fight!
And he did an incredible job.
Yeah, the two Spaniards, Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz,
Yeah.
and then Checo coming in behind,
Just sneaking by,
just
kind of hanging out
just
in the
waiting
back.
back there, just
All he
biding
did
his
was
time.
wait.
The most patient man, patience of a saint, that driver. And when Fernando made the ultimate defensive move against Sainz, to kind of shove him off the track a little
Through
bit.
goes Checo.
Through goes Checo at speed, and even Leclerc tried to chase him through that gap, and there just didn't hold.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that 4-way battle for P3 was really the most entertaining part of the sprint.
It was. Yeah.
I definitely enjoyed watching that. I think everybody else did too. It was good to see Fernando fight like that.
Yeah.
From what I've heard from other fans, longtime watchers of the series, they haven't seen him put on a fight like that in a while.
He did put up a fight at Brazil last year.
Against Checo again.
Against Checo. Yeah. And Checo came out on top this time.
Right.
But, that was definitely the biggest defensive show that I've seen Alonso put on.
Yeah, it was a masterclass in defending and just how to hold a line.
Yeah.
No, it was definitely a good sprint, first sprint of the season. I think it's a good sign of things to come for the sprints. I think previously none of the drivers had taken sprints seriously.
I just don't like them.
They just don't like them, but at the same time, it's especially for a track you don't know, like Shanghai, or don't know it well. It's a good way to practice for the Grand Prix because they only had the one practice session.
Yes.
So it was just a really good opportunity for them to actually get out there and try it.
Right.
And,
Especially because they lift Parc Ferme after the sprint.
Yes, which was a big thing for one team. Poor Mercedes.
Yeah, and not in a good way.
Yeah. So Hamilton places P2 in the sprint. Everybody's, ooh, Lewis Hamilton, he's doing great. He's back, baby.
Team LH.
Yeah, Team LH 44. Woo. Then they, go into Parc Ferme, or Parc Ferme is lifted, so they can make any adjustments to the car that they want. No penalties from the FIA or anything. And so he apparently told his race engineers he wanted to make some pretty big adjustments to the car. And yeah, they made a whole bunch of adjustments, and that led to the Grand Prix qualifying where he qualified P18.
18. That is almost unheard of.
Yes. He's back there with Logan Sargent. You have a 6-time world champion, 7-time, however many he's got.
Yeah.
Back there with
It was so confusing.
the man with one point.
It was like a Twilight Zone episode.
It was very weird to see Lewis back there. Yeah, whatever he did not work.
I wonder, does that say he's just losing his touch when it comes to car setup?
I think he is so fed up with that car. He's just trying a whole bunch of everything to see what sticks.
He's just throwing things at the wall.
Yeah,
at this point.
just telling Bono, his engineer, just like, try literally anything at this point because I can't make anything work. Which is, it's one thing to hear him complain about the car, but George Russell's making it work.
He is, yeah.
Consistently. Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I hate to say driver skill issue, but it's kind of what it looks like.
It's what it's looking like. I mean, we'll only know for sure when Lewis drives for Ferrari next year, whether it's him or the car. The Mercedes car is definitely not great. But like we said, Russell, for what it's worth, is making it work.
Yeah.
He's trying to keep up with the top dogs up there, but Lewis ain't. We'll see.
It'll be interesting to see.
We'll see.
As a Ferrari fan, it is, I can just see the Tifosi clutching their pearls like, don't ruin our Ferraris.
Right.
Don't let this British guy come in here and ruin our Ferrari legacy. But we'll see. I mean, anything can happen between now and next season. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be real interesting to see what Ferrari turns out next year for him to drive. I'm sure he's going to have quite a say in the design process of the new car.
Right.
So it'll be very interesting to see. But yeah, going back to quali, Hamilton P18, Checo barely scraping by into Q2, and able to secure a spot at the end of qualifying. He did really, really well.
Yes, Q3 he did very well.
He did very well, yes. Couple upgrades out there. New floors for Alpine and VCarb. In fact, a whole entire new chassis for Daniel Ricciardo. He'd been complaining about that chassis for the entire season, and apparently they overhauled it, redesigned it, did all the things, and brought it out to Miami.
And it was working for him.
It was decent for him, and then the son of Stroll decides to rear-end it.
Yeah. On the Alpine side, I mean, they weren't fantastic, but they were at least keeping up with the midfield, lower half of the midfield.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something at least.
It's something at least. So, I think it was during qualifying, Will Buxton went down to the pit lane and was looking at it and was talking about the new floor that Alpine added and all that. But he made a comment that it's the same weight as the previous one. Like, they didn't shave off any weight at all. So it's still heavy as a tractor.
So freaking heavy, yeah.
But it's at least a little more aerodynamic, I guess. So,
great. You put a spoiler on a tractor. Great job, guys.
typical French,
Yeah.
Doing what we can, I guess.
Reminds me of that meme of a cow in a wind tunnel.
Yes.
Very similar setup there.
It can be aerodynamic if you put a big enough engine behind it, I suppose. But, that was...
Now, was Ricciardo the only V-carb that got an upgrade, or did Yuki get one too?
From what I heard, it was just Ricciardo. Ricciardo was the only one running the upgrade. They were leaving Yuki with the old specs so that they could compare the two. And then I think the plan is for Miami for them both to have that new spec.
Okay, because I don't know if it was just Yuki couldn't get a good night's sleep that weekend or what, but he did not show up to race that weekend.
That was very disappointing. We see this great performance from him in the points in
Right.
Suzuka.
Yeah.
And then he shows up to Shanghai and just...
Completely different driver.
Yeah, completely different driver. Does not do well in qualifying. In the race, he has a collision with, I believe it was Magnussen.
Yes.
One of the Haas's, I believe it was Magnussen.
Yeah, it was Magnussen.
Popped his tire, spun him out, and he had to retire the car.
Yeah, a retirement also might have been better for him.
Yeah.
Because it was a really minor retirement. It was just a pop tire.
Right.
But, yeah, it was not a good look for him, unfortunately.
No, it was definitely saved him from some pain and heartache in the later parts of the race. And unfortunately, he wasn't the only V-carb to retire, but we'll get to the actual race in a second. Going back to qualifying, let's talk about signs in qualifying.
The smooth operator who forgot to be smooth.
I don't know. It seemed pretty smooth to me. He didn't total the car.
Sure.
But on the final turn, he hit the same gravel trap that Lando hit and spun it completely around into a J turn, destroyed a styrofoam board, and put the rear right wheel into the wall.
Yep.
No damage. Ripped off his front wing, but didn't damage the suspension at all.
Yeah.
Managed to limp it back to the pits. Let me back up. Came to a complete stop on the side of the track.
Yes, then we got a red flag out of it.
Yep. Had to stop. Marshals came out, checked him over, and then gave him their blessing to return it to the pits. Drove it to the pits under his own power. Gets it back to the pits, replaces the wing. Ferrari checks the car out. It was red flagged at that point. Qualifying resumes. He goes back and he qualifies. Does fantastic in qualifying. Sets a fantastic time.
Yeah.
After qualifying, Aston Martin and Mike Crack, their team principal, decide to take a €2,000 gamble, and they protest Carlos's qualification time.
They did.
In the sporting regulations, there is I can't remember what section it is, 39 point something. The way it reads is if during qualifying any driver comes to a stop and then restarts or rejoins the race, they are to be immediately disqualified from the qualifying. They can still partake in the race, but they take
all their times are deleted.
All their times are deleted.
Yeah.
Aston Martin protested that because Sainz brought the car to a complete stop and then rejoined the race, he should have been disqualified.
Right.
And they had a whole big meeting with the FIA over that.
Big old meeting. The FIA basically came to the conclusion that basically their final explanation was because we have interpreted this rule differently in the past, basically saying that it's they're considering it a stop under your own power.
Right.
Whereas with Sainz, it was a wreck that he was able to recover from and get back on the track with.
Right.
So that's a different scenario. So they ended up denying the protest.
Right. And they also said it could also be interpreted if you came to a stop and were unable to get the car moving again under its own power.
Correct.
That would be a qualifying. Like you had a power unit completely give out or something like that, you're completely disqualified at that point.
Which makes sense.
Yes, correct. But because Sainz was able to start the car back up, rejoin the race in a safe manner, and the stewards told him to, like they were motioning for him to rejoin the track.
Right.
The FIA told Aston Martin, your appeal is denied. And
it just kind of seemed like like Aston Martin had called up their big engineering headquarters in Silverstone and say, what rule can we use?
Right.
And that's the one they came up with.
I gotta believe that there's some Aston Martin engineer just flipping through that sporting code like, gotta find something, gotta spend that $2,000.
The nerd with the thick glasses and the tape in between them.
Yeah.
That kind of a guy. Yeah.
Probably one of those people with like a photographic memory who just knows the sporting code.
Right. Backwards and forwards.
By memory. Yeah.
Yeah. Every team has at least one of those guys.
Yeah, I'm sure. So it was a little disappointing to see Aston Martin. I don't want to say that they stooped low, but it felt like that was a low blow of, come on, if you had been in that spot and had been able to rejoin the race.
Right. You're just mad that Alonso got beat.
Yes.
That's all it really
by
boils
another
down
Spaniard.
to. Yeah.
So, yeah, it was definitely a little bit sad from Aston Martin. But what can you expect from a team run by Lance Stroll?
Yeah, it is what it is.
So, the actual race itself, the actual Grand Prix. The race itself was a pretty normal start, I would say.
Sure.
Nothing particularly out of the ordinary for I would say the first half of it.
Yep, no incidents in turn one this time.
Yep, no incidents turn one. Everybody seemed pretty even keel, I would say.
Sure.
Sauber had a couple sub 4-second pit stops.
Yes.
That was really the big highlight was we can change a tire in 3 seconds. So that was good to see, making some slight improvement.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Except
It took a while. It took way too long.
It did take too long.
Yeah.
Poor Valtteri, his power unit decided to kick the
Yeah,
bucket.
he had an engine failure.
Yeah, so it was sad to see him
got a
retire.
nice
He
little,
was doing pretty good, too. He was like, wasn't he like P11 or something like
Yeah,
that?
he was fighting for points there.
Yeah,
that was heartbreaking to see.
Yeah, he was going up against Hulkenberg there for a hot minute for that P10 slot.
Yeah, and he got a nice little scooter ride back to the paddock.
That was fun. And then he ends up in the pits. There's video, I think, of him watching the McLaren pit stop.
Yeah.
That's at like a 1.9 second pit stop
1.8.
for Lando or something like that. You just see him sitting there watching it, just like, that's a dream.
The poor man.
Poor Valtteri, poor Sauber. It's
Yeah, Zhou Guan Yu came to race though.
He did.
With what he had, he did well, and you could see the fan appreciation for the guy all over the stands. I did find it a little funny that every time they focused on one of his overtakes, it was on the one American on the grid.
Right.
I just couldn't help but notice that. But yeah,
Great Chinese propaganda at work.
right. All in all, very happy for Zhou. I think he had a good run with what he had.
He really did.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really nice that they let him park his car on the starting grid
was
at
cool.
the end
That was a
and
cool moment.
have a moment with the crowd. I think
Yeah.
that was a nice touch.
Yeah.
He clearly has a lot of support there at home, and it was good to see all of them back in China doing their thing, but especially him coming home and getting to do all that. So
Yeah, definitely.
those were the highlights of the race. Now let's talk about the lowlights. So this race had 2 safety cars.
Yes. Back to back.
The latter of which caused a whole lot of problems. So let's start with the low minor incidents and work our way up to the big one.
Sure.
Logan received a 10-second penalty for overtaking under safety car.
Yeah, with his, I mean,
His team told him to.
technically, yes, he did. Was it Pierre Gasly?
I think so, yes.
He technically did pass him, but it was so close on the line. No human eye could have been able to tell.
Right. It was minuscule.
So, yeah, I mean, gets up a penalty is fair, but 10 seconds?
Seemed a bit harsh.
Yeah, it seemed a bit harsh. I would have gone 5 or 3.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were Logan, maybe I would have, because they blew flag. We have a blue flag on the pit lane
Right.
to tell those cars that are at full speed, hey, there's a car exiting.
Right.
So, judging by how far back you were, when you see the blue flag, like maybe you could slow down or speed up.
Right.
And I'm guessing Logan gambled and decided to speed up. That's the only thing I can think of.
And didn't have enough speed to pass him.
It's a Williams.
It's a Williams with a Mercedes power unit.
Yeah.
Need we say more? No. So that, 10-second penalty for him.
Yep.
And then Hulkenberg also received a 10-second penalty for passing probably the biggest issue during that safety car, which was an accident between Lance Stroll and Danny Ricciardo, which we'll get into that in just a second. But they had an incident under safety car, and Hulkenberg had to swerve and miss it, and because he did so, overtook Ricciardo and Stroll on the safety car and received a penalty for it.
That doesn't make sense to me.
That does not make sense to me.
As long as he gives the position back, which, I mean, you kind of have to go through all the jumble of, okay, who can pit, who cannot, who has to retire,
right?
That kind of a deal. And then put Nico back where he's supposed to go.
Right.
As long as he does that before the green flag comes back, I don't understand why you should have a penalty.
I don't know either. That seemed like a very arbitrary, like, you were just a bystander. You're probably involved in some way.
Right.
Screw you.
How dare you try to make the accident less worse?
Yes. It was a mess.
Yeah.
So those were the time penalties assessed to the those around the accident. Now let's talk about the accident.
Yeah.
So the last hairpin curve of the Shanghai International Circuit, turn, I believe that's 12 and 13.
Pretty sure that's 14.
14 is the one going onto the straight, so it'd be 13, 12 at the hairpin, right?
Okay, yeah. All right, yeah.
I think. I'm not sure. Anyway, last couple of turns, right before the pit straight.
Yeah.
Under safety car, everybody's queued up.
Yes.
And that's a pretty hard braking zone because it's a tight turn.
It is.
And then Lance, just as they're coming into it, is looking at the apex of the turn.
Yep.
Not looking at the car in front of him, and hits Danny Ricciardo in the back diffuser of the car.
Sends him airborne.
Lifts the back two wheels off the ground, and then slant when he, finally brakes, sending Danny forward, and Danny's car just slams into the tarmac.
Yep. It also hits Piastri.
Clips Piastri.
Yep.
And pretty much destroys that brand new floor that VCARB gave Ricciardo. And got slapped with a 10-second penalty for that as well.
Right.
And Danny, I think, limped it along for 2 or 3 more laps, and then had to retire it because of the damage.
It's just too much.
Yeah. Piastri managed to finish the race, but he had some pretty bad damage on the diffuser.
Yeah.
His lap times at the end were not great. No fault of his own, of course. But
yeah. Now, what started this whole thing was Alonso at the front of this whole train locked up on that hairpin.
Right.
Which caused all the cars behind him to hit their brakes.
Correct. What they call the concertina effect.
Yeah. So it's just basically a domino effect of braking.
Yes.
But Lance had 2 or 3 car lengths between him and Ricciardo, and he's like looking off to the right instead of looking at the car in front of him. When you go into a hairpin under a safety car, what?
Yeah, it made no sense at all.
It was so dumb.
Yeah, and then so after it immediately happens, he comes on the radio and blames Danny.
Blames him.
And
full out calls him an idiot.
Yeah, calls him an idiot. Danny retires, gets back to the pits, and of course the press gets a hold of him. And they're like, hey, he's saying it's your fault, and Danny's like, well, I had just calmed down about this whole thing. Now I'm pissed,
Right,
and was very, very mad.
Right, and even after the race, with time to check everything out, Lance was completely unapologetic about it.
Right,
and just tried to pass it off as a racing incident. I'm like, my brother in Christ, you weren't even racing.
Right.
No. Own up to it. Like, I get that part of being a driver is not just quickly taking the blame for things. You don't want to look bad. I understand that. But there is no way that this was a racing incident. You can't write this one off.
No, that was a driver issue. That
It was.
And
Like,
Lance should have owned
I
that one.
try to give drivers a lot of chances. I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. I would make a terrible team principal because I would give drivers way more chances than they deserve. And I've even stood up for Lance a couple of times. I did on our last episode.
Right.
But no, Lance has got to go, man.
Yeah. And
He's licked too many windows. Shout out to Rocket Power Mohawk for that name. But yeah, no, it's almost a safety issue at this point.
it really is. He's caused a whole lot of really bad accidents.
Yeah.
He's not one to just. I mean, he puts it into the wall quite a bit. But let's say the difference between Lance Stroll and Logan Sargent. Logan Sargent just goes and puts it into a wall all by his lonesome.
Yeah,
back there at the back of the pack. There's nobody around. He's in his own little sandbox.
He'd
He
be
can't hurt
great
nobody.
at baseball because he keeps sending it to the far wall.
Right. Lance, however, I feel like he gets overly ambitious in the middle of the pack, especially sometimes in the early laps of the races when the pack is tight.
Yeah.
And he'll get real aggressive and just decide to send it at completely the wrong moment.
Right.
And yeah, like was it Singapore last year? It was towards the end of the race, but he's in a pretty tight, locked battle with one of the McLarens. I believe it was Piastri, and on the final straight, he just overshot it through the last corner and put it right into the wall.
And it's not like this is something that is new. Back when he was at Racing Point, he was doing this. He was doing dangerous back exits, like entries onto the track in reverse.
right.
And even had the nerve to yell at, I forget who it was, but somebody else had done the exact same thing. Lance calls this guy an idiot, and then he copies him. It's just a repetitive thing. Lance is clearly not learning.
I want to look
from
up
those
real
mistakes.
quick. I think
I believe that was at Monza when this particular incident occurred.
that sounds right. Let's see. This is a
But I want to give huge props to Ricardo for his demeanor throughout the entire thing. He could have been, yelling on the radio. He could have, really ripped Lance apart during the post-race interviews. But no, he definitely said, I am pissed off. But on radio, he said, I'm going to hold it in. And he didn't really even talk about Lance at all.
Right.
He just described how he felt and what he saw and left it at that.
Right.
So major professionalism from Danny Rick.
So let's put everything into perspective here. The FIA hands out penalty points to a driver's license every time they commit a serious racing infraction, whether it be a accident that they determine was deliberately reckless.
Yeah.
Or a penalty such as like a 5 or 10 second penalty and that kind of stuff. Penalties are assessed to their license. If they get 12 penalty points in a season, and it's concurrent to the previous season, so it covers the previous season, current into the next one, and they reset at the end of the next season.
Okay.
12 points gets you a ban for the next race. You basically have to forfeit a race.
Interesting.
Yeah. So currently, as it stands, after this, Lance Stroll sitting at 7 penalty points, only behind 8 that Checo has and Logan Sargent has.
Okay.
So he's over halfway to getting a racing ban.
He's over halfway there.
Yeah. There's a song about that.
There is.
But yeah, he's definitely sitting up there with quite a bit of
Now it would be
negative attention
wrong
from the FIA.
it would be wrong to hope that he gets to that 12 because somebody else could get hurt
True. Yeah.
through these incidents.
True. But if he continues at the rate he's going to hit that. And at some point, if he has to sit out a race and cost Aston more chance at points.
You know what that means? That means Felipe Drugovich is going to take his seat for a race, and he's going to show him up.
Yes. And we like Felipe
We
Drugovich.
love Felipe Drugovich.
Drugovich is a boss.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at that point, you have to look at it and go, I mean, everybody knows it. Everybody knows Lance Stroll is daddy's boy. He's only in that seat.
Yeah.
I mean, is he capable? Yeah. The guy's taken a podium before.
He could beat you and I, no problem.
Yeah, I mean,
in any
he's
car.
beating Logan Sargent. He's beating, most of the back end of the pack. He's beaten
Right.
both Haas
He's
drivers.
won races in lower categories.
Yes.
He's no pushover when it comes to motorsport in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
But he does not belong in F1.
He doesn't have the racecraft for
He does
Formula
not,
One.
no.
He needs to go do Indy or something
rally.
else. You know,
Actually, no, I wouldn't trust him in a rally car.
no, like world endurance racing. You know, something that's more.
You can't
relaxed.
touch anything.
Yeah. Don't
You
hit
can't
it.
wreck anything because there's nothing else to wreck.
Is there a world bumper car championship?
That's just demo derbies.
That's true. We
Yeah.
could definitely sign him up for some of that.
He'd do well there.
So yeah, it was a bit of a disappointment seeing Stroll cause that accident, Stroll not take ownership of that accident,
Yeah.
and get slapped with a 10 place penalty, and then they assessed a penalty on Ricciardo unrelated to the wreck. Ricciardo got a 3-pace grid penalty for also overtaking under a safety car, as well in a different incident.
Yeah.
Then like all of that, and they didn't give Stroll, who caused this massive accident, forcing Ricciardo to retire. They didn't give him a grid penalty for Miami.
Yeah, which goes back to my thing about consistency with the FIA. There just isn't any.
There is none.
If anything, those 2 penalties should be reversed,
Yes,
in
I
my
would agree.
opinion. I mean, it doesn't make sense to give a 10-second penalty to a car that is retired.
Right.
So I guess that's the only thing they could come up with, but 3 places is a lot.
That is a lot.
That's way more than 10 seconds, I feel like.
Yeah, especially because I think isn't VCARB, they've burned quite a bit of their components also, so they are already down components. They can't. I mean,
Yeah.
a grid penalty and having to replace components to repair a chassis and all that kind of stuff. That's just, it's not setting up VCARB very good for the back half of this season. They're gonna roll into your Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi. They're gonna roll into those last couple races. That thing's gonna be running on Legos,
Yeah.
and duct tape, and
Right.
paper clips.
And yeah, 10 seconds for Lance just does not seem like enough.
No, it doesn't. Not enough to discourage him from doing this kind of damage.
Right. Now, public image wise, he has really shot himself in the foot.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
don't get me wrong. The incident in and of itself makes you look like an idiot. But the way he has handled himself afterward, blaming Ricardo, not taking responsibility, not even really acknowledging that he did anything wrong, has really screwed up his image.
Yeah.
Like, I went through several different Aston Martin Instagram posts, all like during the GP and post GP, and all the comments were just get rid of Lance, fire Lance. Why is Lance still here? Like, it was bad.
Yeah, and I mean, people have been saying that people were saying that even last year, and it's just one of the things that as long as
Sure.
Lawrence Stroll owns the team, what can you do? I
Yeah,
mean,
like I said, it's a Jerry Jones kind of scenario.
it really is. It's sad. It's sad to see a team like Aston Martin have someone like Fernando Alonso having to absolutely carry that team on his back because his teammate is incapable of not totaling a car all the time and being a public menace. out
Basically,
there.
yeah.
So very sad. Other than that, the race ended with Max P1.
Yep.
Shocker of shockers. Lando Norris took P2 and Checo Perez P3. Fernando Alonso did manage to steal that fastest lap from Max.
He
so
did,
there's
yeah.
some-
I'm sure Max took that personally.
No, I'm sure he did. But at least Aston Martin could celebrate some little win with all of Alonso's effort.
Yeah, it was nice to see Lando shooting the champagne up into the air again.
Yep.
And he did not break the trophy this
Did
time.
not break the trophy.
So,
Did wear it
Progress.
as he should.
Yeah, that was a cool trophy.
Honestly, one of the cooler trophies on the F1 calendar.
I was confused by the reveal of it online because they didn't show a 2-scale picture, so I thought it was a legitimate ring.
Oh, like on your finger?
Yeah, not like a wreath. I was like, oh, cool, it's a little ring. It's symbolic. That's a different take, but I like it. But, it's massive. Okay.
And it lights up. There's lights inside of it. So
Yeah.
when they put it on, it registers and it turns on and glows. You couldn't tell in the podium ceremony, but apparently
Right,
there's
yeah.
like a button you can hit and it lights up and does.
Just take it to the club that night to celebrate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lando does seem like the clubbing type.
Yeah.
He really does. So,
The Max definitely is. We know that from Vegas.
true that.
Now, before we move on, you want to talk about the Tsunoda incident really quick?
Yes.
Turn 1, which is a really long turn, you have Kevin Magnussen taking the inside, and loses grip for a little bit, has to make a really big overcorrection, happens to bump into Yuki.
Yeah.
Which was really disappointing. We had a nice little long bleep from Yuki. Glad to see him back again. But yeah.
Somebody took the duct tape off.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, he was tired of biting his tongue.
Right.
But yeah, no, that was more of a racing incident.
Yes, agreed.
It didn't seem intentional or like just. It didn't even seem negligent per se on K-Mac's part. It was just an overcorrection.
Yeah.
From what I think.
Yep.
A little bit of understeer that he had to change for, which is what you do when you're racing.
Yep.
So I think that, you know how we had people calling for Lance to be fired. A lot of the same was happening for K-Mag online, which I don't think is fair. Now, to be fair, he has been quite the menace this past season.
He's been running interference for
He's been running interference, but he has been nowhere near as disruptive or as destructive as Lance has been.
Agreed.
So this isolated moment alone, just a racing incident. Let's just leave it at that.
It's early in the season, so I don't think it's too harsh to penalize K-Mag for something like that. Like you said, if a racing incident. If it had been something malicious or anything like that, or caused significant damage, that might have been a different story.
Right.
But
you can look at his onboard and tell that he's holding that line pretty well, but I think
his tires didn't grip.
his whole they were hard tires.
Yep.
You know, I forget how old they were, but they weren't fresh. So yeah, what more can you do?
Yeah, it's just the nature of that track, nature of that turn. You know, it's going to happen.
Right. Lando can attest to that. The only one who can't for some reason is Fernando Alonso.
It's a weird one for sure.
Yeah, that man just knows something that we don't.
Yeah. No, other than that, it was a decent race to watch. There was a lot of on-track action, a lot of good overtakes, a lot of good action. I enjoyed it. Shout out to the DFW F1 Breakfast Club for letting us join them and watch it here in Fort Worth. If any of our listeners are in the DFW area, highly recommend you check those guys out. They're a super friendly group of folks. Meet at a local pub here in downtown Fort Worth and watch every race live.
You as a Ferrari fan needed some reinforcements.
I know. There was a whole crew of Red Bull fans. There were some Merc fans, a couple McLaren fans, and I'm the lone red shirt in there, and I felt like I was going to die. So, yeah, definitely if you're a DFW area Tifosi, you know, come out and support the colors because we need you. There's not many of us around here. Everybody's around. I'm a red shirt in Red Bull territory, and I feel I feel attacked. All right, and with that, we're gonna roll into the forecast. The upcoming race on Cinco de Mayo, the Miami Grand Prix.
Yeah,
coming back stateside for their first time this year at the Miami International Autodrome, which, for those who are unfamiliar, it's not even kidding. It's the parking lot around Hard Rock Stadium in Miami where the Miami Dolphins play.
Which, for some dumb reason, technically makes it a street circuit.
Which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
It really is.
Not going to lie, it looks cool.
Oh, it looks cool. Yeah. I love how there's almost like a theme with Miami and racing, the blue walls.
Yeah.
You have this at the Autodrome, and you also have that at Homestead, Miami, which is where NASCAR does their races.
Right.
So it's a nice touch.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's consistent, if nothing else.
The track in and of itself is the layout is kind of similar to China as far as high speed goes.
Yep.
The only real difference is that it's tighter.
It's a lot more narrow because
it's narrower. There's no really open spaces. There's some runoff spots, but there's no like big gravel traps or anything like that.
There's one big hairpin turn about halfway through the track that has a big wide runoff area in it, but that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot tighter.
And then the end of the back straight right before you turn into the pit lane.
Big runoff area there too. Yeah.
That's about
so
it.
Yeah, way less room for error.
Yes.
At this track than at Shanghai.
Yes. So it's definitely gonna. If you didn't do well at Shanghai, you're probably not gonna do great at Miami.
Yeah, probably not.
And the same problem, Miami being coastal, weather is top flip a coin. You never know what you're going to get. We've raced it in the rain. We've raced it in the sun. The last couple of years we've had it. You just never know. They have had it where practices in the sprint have been in the rain, races in the dry.
Sure, yeah.
So the teams really can't prep too far in advance. They won't know what they're going to be doing until they actually get there.
Yes, and like China, this is a sprint weekend.
Yes.
So sprint data is going to be crucial.
Sprint day is going to be crucial. That track's going to be rubbered in really nice. We have the full I believe F3 is racing.
Yes.
F2 is not. F2 doesn't come back until Imola.
But F1 Academy is.
F1 Academy is also racing there.
Yeah.
So you're going to get two support circuits. They're going to rubber in that track nicely. Plus one free practice session and then the sprint. So the Grand Prix should be primo time for some good racing, I would hope.
As long as the weather cooperates.
As long as the weather cooperates.
Yeah.
And this time, early May, Miami, it should be decent. I mean, we're not in hurricane season. We're not in, the crazy weather patterns that you get later in the summer. So hopefully it'll be good. Time will tell. But, it's a 5.412 kilometer circuit, 57 laps. Current record is a minute 29.708, set by yours truly, Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
But no, I think it'll be a good race. There's a couple of teams that are bringing up some small upgrade packages to it. Apparently Haas is supposed to be bringing their first upgrade package out there. I believe Alpine's bringing a small one. And I think Williams is supposed to have their third chassis brought in to Miami. So they'll be...
I wonder how quickly they're going to utilize that chassis.
I'm sure they're going to use it immediately and go put Albin's, into some serious depot repair because that thing's got to be held together with Bondo and
hopes and dreams,
masking tape.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what they all bring out at this race. It seems like most of the teams have said either Miami or Imola are going to be their first round of upgrades.
Cool. That'll be exciting.
So it'll be good to see what these teams have been able to work in the first couple weeks or first couple months of the season, first races, and the data they've got, what they've been able to turn that into at the factories.
So who do you think is going to take the biggest leap forward with these upgrades?
With the upgrades, I've been really enthusiastic about Haas's.
Me too.
Progress.
That was going to be my
AU, I'm probably saying his name wrong. Their new team principal. How do you say his name?
Oh boy, I have to read it.
I'll
have to read it.
Yeah, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but Gunther Steiner's replacement. That guy has totally revamped their entire racing strategy and philosophy.
Ayao Komatsu.
Komatsu, that's right. He seems like a control.
Why is there a picture of Gunther Steiner next to Ayo's name on Google?
Whoops. Press error.
I know the man's iconic, but come on.
But no, they've really overhauled their racing philosophy and the whole upgrade thing. Because previously under Steiner, it was upgrades don't show up until like Austin or
that seems a little late.
Yeah, or Singapore. Like that's where they've brought them in the last couple of seasons apparently. And Komatsu's basically like, no, we're going to be, as soon as the factory has them ready, bring them to the next race. Like, we're going to start deploying them sooner instead of one big package at the end of the year. And, I mean, even without upgrades, Hulkenberg's got points on the board. So, if these upgrades work well and they deploy them to both cars, I mean, can you imagine a day where we might see Magnussen scoring points?
That would be incredible.
It'd be wonderful. So, yeah, I would say Haas is definitely, I think, the ones, definitely from, if press is to be believed and, the commentary is to be believed, I think Haas is going to take the biggest step forward and surprise a lot of people at Miami.
Yeah, I agree. Which will be great to see on an American track.
Yes, they are, being an American team, the only American-owned team on the grid, they have a lot of fans here stateside, huge amount of fans in Austin, but definitely Miami, with their headquarters being in, I believe it's North Carolina. It's not too far from Miami. So
right. Sure yeah, we know that MoneyGram has a big office here in Dallas.
Yeah, so. Yeah, being headquartered here. They do a lot of press stuff around here. They did a thing last year over in Frisco, ISD. They had the drivers in town, and Gunther was here, and they did a whole big thing. It was
cool.
Made the local news, so that was cool to see. So we've talked about which teams are going to take the biggest step forward. What driver do you think needs to individually improve the most and show off at Miami?
I think that Valtteri Bottas is chomping at the bit here.
Yeah,
because things are starting to piece together for him. If
he
hadn't had that engine failure in China, I think he would have performed really well.
Yeah,
he would have been able to compete for points. So I think he wants to replicate that.
I can see that.
Yeah, so I'm going Valtteri.
I would also say Valtteri, but I'd also say George Russell.
Did they mention George once during the Chinese Grand Prix?
Nope.
I almost forgot he was there.
And he didn't do bad. He was in the points. I think it was like P6 or 7 or something like that.
I think P6, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't do horrible.
No, he beat Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, and he did great in the sprint. Like he took that Mercedes and didn't screw up.
Yeah, what did he do to tick the Chinese the Chinese cameraman off?
No idea, but yeah, he was just not mentioned hardly at all in Shanghai, and so he's the lone guy in Mercedes that's not complaining, first of all, and then taking that car and actually doing something with it. And so, I feel like Miami is going to be his chance to shine.
I guess the entertainment value is in Lewis complaining.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to show what's entertaining the most, what breeds drama and controversy and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And Russell's pretty quiet for the most part.
Yeah,
really, the only drama he ever gets into is with his own teammate whenever they're side by side. Like we had it in Suzuka. Shall I let George by?
Right.
A little spat, whatever. Team orders have been a thing in the Mercedes garage for a couple of seasons now between them.
Yeah.
But no, I think Miami is going to be a big shot for them to do something. Miami is one of those tracks, kind of like China. It has that long straight, which is really, really important. And we know Mercedes doesn't have the straight line speed to dominate that like Red Bull and Ferrari do.
Correct.
However, I will say they seem to be doing... Lewis isn't doing it, but I feel like George is capable of handling those tighter turns in that Mercedes very well.
Yeah,
whatever Lewis is doing is not working, but George can, and I think that can make him up some time in Miami. I think
because aside from that one straight, the rest of Miami is all tight turns.
Yes, and I could see him, especially the chicanes going into that tight turn. I could see Mercedes just zipping through there real fast.
Yeah, one can hope.
So my money's on George Russell stepping up and doing something big, and then I think he wants to. I think he wants to cement. I'm the lead dog at Mercedes. Who I'm going to tell these young guns to get off my lawn,
right?
Antonelli and all of them. So time will tell. But no, I think it'll be a good race.
What's your top 5 prediction?
Top 5 prediction. That's a great question.
Say it. Max P1. Say it.
I refuse. It's a matter of principle at this point. I want to see Sainz go back to P1 again. I think he can do it, and I think Miami's a track he can do it on. I think that Ferrari has the straight line speed on that straight. It's performed brilliantly in the corners. They solved Leclerc's braking issue that he had at Bahrain and Saudi. That man could take turns on a dime. So I think Ferrari has figured out the front turning stuff on that car perfectly now. I'm going to say Sainz P1.
Okay.
With a Verstappen P2, just because he will always be on a podium, it feels like. There's no way to not have him on a podium.
Fair enough.
And then I'm going to say Norris looked real happy on that podium. I'm going to say Norris P3.
Yeah.
Leclerc P4, Perez P5.
So you and I are extremely close. I'm putting Max in P1, not just because I love Max. My reasoning is, we saw how he showed up at China.
Yes.
And Miami, very similar to China, similar layout. So he's already got that mindset going.
Yeah.
And also, we know that Max is one of the best wet condition drivers on the grid. So if it does happen to be wet for that weekend, I think that he's going to be fine. Yeah. I don't think that's going to change his race that much.
Right.
And I agree with you on Sainz, which is why I'm putting him in P2.
Okay.
And I also agree with you about Lando. Like I said last week, that fire has been lit under his butt.
Yep.
So I'm putting Lando in P3.
Okay.
And I think Checo is honestly going to be really motivated to at least pursue that podium and try and secure his seat for next season.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put Checo P4.
Okay.
And you're going to hate me for this. I also agree with you about Russell.
You think Russell's going to make
I think Russell is going to hold off Leclerc. I'm calling that.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Russell is tired of being stuck behind those guys. And I think he's going to put his foot down, both literally and figuratively.
If the track is dry, I could see that happening. If it's in the wet, no chance.
Sure. Yeah, those are my 5.
No, that's definitely a good prediction.
Thank you.
I think it will be some flavor of that. So,
and before we move forward, your P10 prediction, last point.
I was right on my last one. I'm going Hulkenberg again.
Again, okay. It's a fair prediction. Do you have a
fantasy
reason?
Team reflects it. I wholeheartedly believe in this man.
Fair enough. I was totally off about Yuki. I had so much faith in the man. Poor guy. But I'm going to go with the other Haas, Kevin Magnussen.
You think Magnussen's going to be the...
I think Magnussen's going to either be too tired of being behind Nico or just acclimate to that upgrade package a little better.
Okay.
Because, yeah, either that or he's just going to cause too much mayhem.
He'll be in P10 because that's the last position left because he destroyed everybody else behind him. Okay, I can see Magnussen P10.
Can't finish in P11 if there's no P11.
Was that a threat?
Just an observation.
Oh, boy. It'll be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah.
So. All right, yeah. Any other safe rounds for the Miami Grand Prix?
I do not believe so, sir.
All right, yep. So, like we said, the race is Cinco de Mayo, so break out the tacos and
Margaritas.
Enjoy that race. It'll be fantastic. So we'll roll from that into the traffic report. Not a whole lot to cover, but take a moment to just mention that the EA released the first real gameplay trailer for F1 24.
Yeah, a good in-depth look at it.
Yes, and full disclosure, I'm not a huge EA fan. The last 10 years of EA games have really burned me.
EA Sports. It's a game.
It's a game, I guess. Most of their sports games have been pretty lackluster. Battlefield's been a big disappointment.
Yeah.
Hasn't really been much else to write home about. The Star Wars games were okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Fallen Order and that kind of thing.
Yeah, the Respawn ones have been great.
Yeah, those haven't been too bad, but most other EA titles have just been very lackluster. And while we've enjoyed F1 22 and 23, longtime fans of the series have been very disappointed with the last two installments. But it seems like the reception for the upcoming game looks really, really good.
Yeah.
They've updated the aero model so that the cars will more accurately reflect actual wind tunnel tests from the teams.
Yes.
Tire degradation is going to be an actual serious thing. The game really I feel like it hasn't really done much with tire degradation at all. I feel like it's been
pretty rudimentary.
Very rudimentary. It's either good, bad, medium. There's no in between.
Yeah.
This is going to be more of a sliding scale depending on conditions and driving style.
Right.
An overhauled career mode, which I'm excited for. You and I have had quite a bit of fun doing the two-player careers on that. And,
yeah, that'll be fun to do again.
Mocking each other relentlessly through that. So it'll be good to see that make a return. So that releases end of May.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely follow us on YouTube and Twitch and all that kind of stuff. We plan on breaking that out once it launches and putting it through its paces and seeing what it's like.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Be fun to watch. So. And with that, we roll into everybody's favorite segment of this show, the tinfoil hat party.
Yay.
Whoop, whoop. And starting off this party, cue the DJ, the fallout from the Lance Stroll incident. What do we think that Stroll's big old crash, what's going to come of it? Any changes at all?
Short term, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Except just more people are gonna, just dislike the guy.
Yeah.
Because, remember, we've been getting a lot more new F1 fans thanks to Drive to Survive.
True.
They're still trickling in, and then they see, imagine this is your first Grand Prix, and you see this, and then you see Lance's reaction, and you're just like, ugh, why is this guy here?
Right.
So that's going to snowball.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a slow snowball.
Yep.
Yeah, between that, we got, Daddy's money keeping him in that seat, at least for right now. But like we just said, Filip Drugovich is right there.
Yep.
Chomping at the bit.
Yep.
So Lance, he's on thin ice.
Very thin ice.
One or two more slip-ups like that, Felipe will show him up and in a replacement seat for one Grand Prix. And then it'll be way shakier as to whether or not he'll come back.
You think he'll survive the summer break?
Oh, yeah.
You think he'll make it to the end of the year?
I think so. Okay. End of the year, definitely. Next season or two is probably more questionable.
I think as long as he doesn't get a racing ban, he'll make it to the end of the year.
Yeah.
If he gets hit with a racing ban, I think he'll get cut immediately.
You think so? Even with Big Daddy Stroll?
I think at that point, Stroll has to do something to save face because on the one hand, you got investors you've got to maintain. yes, Stroll has a lot of money, but running a Formula One team is expensive.
Sure.
You cannot do this without sponsors.
Yeah.
And sponsors have demands. And Alonso, just the sponsors flock to that man because he's a legend.
Yeah, exactly.
And in all the other teams, you have both drivers doing all of these big sponsorship type stuff. Like Max does everything, but Checo does a whole bunch of stuff as well. Ferrari, both Charles and Carlos have sponsors.
Yeah.
Same with McLaren. Both drivers have a lot of sponsors. I don't think Stroll has hardly any sponsorships for him specifically.
No,
they're
not
either for
really.
the team as a whole or for Alonso. So if the team sponsors are like, we're not getting anything out of Stroll, like he's not bringing value to the team, they're gonna go to Lawrence and be like, look, you either replace your son with a real driver, someone who can score points and not be a detriment to the team.
It's just going to come down to blood or money.
Yep.
For Lawrence.
Yep. And I mean, he's been willing to shell out the money this far, but even that has limits.
Sure. I guess it just comes down to sooner rather than later.
Right.
And it seems like you're going sooner, and I'm choosing later.
Right. And I think at some point, Lance has got to say, I want to get out of my dad's shadow. People know I'm here because of my dad. Let me go to Haas. Let me go to Williams and try it somewhere else.
I don't know. I just don't see Lance as that kind of guy.
No?
Nah, I think he's just happy where he's at. Like, remember, he thinks about dinner while he's driving.
Yeah, but
He's not motivated to win
you
championships.
can also do that while you're driving a Zamboni.
Yeah, or riding on the back of one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really, just based on his demeanor and attitude, I don't think that he's really motivated to be a race winner or a championship winner.
Yeah.
He's
I
just
agree.
kind of along for the ride and, taking the perks and money that come along with that as, Lawrence Stroll's son.
Yeah, kind of a footnote in the Formula One history books, I think, is what he's going to end up as because he's not, like you said, he's not championship material. So, yeah, I hope, I for the sake of everybody else on the Aston Martin team, I wish they would replace him because it's not just about the drivers. I mean, you've got a whole factory, you've got pit crews, you've got engineering, you've got all these people who are putting in blood, sweat, and tears into those cars.
Yeah.
And for someone to go out there and just constantly wreck them, first of all, but seem to have no real regard for any team morale, sportsmanship, or love of the game, for lack of a better term. It just seems like he's there because he just wants to race and it's what he does.
Right. It's almost a hobby for him, which is vastly different from Kimi Raikkonen's version of a hobby.
I was going to say, if you're about to compare Lance Stroll to Kimi Raikkonen, you know you're about to
I would
have a
never
fight
do
on our
that.
hands. But no, you're right. It's just it's something to do. It's what Daddy's paying you to do, and you kind of enjoy it. And
Right,
it's,
yeah.
But at the end of the day, this is the pinnacle of motorsport, not a take Dad's car and go
It's
race
not a
around.
gentleman's club.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what he's treating it as,
Yeah, basically.
which is sad. So hopefully, for the sake of the team, somebody pushes Lawrence far enough to say, like, hey, you got to give this up. You
Yeah.
got to get somebody in there.
Yeah, one can hope.
Yeah, sooner rather than later. So, and second on the tinfoil hat docket, Alpine was fined 10,000 euros. It's a big chunk of change for an unsafe release.
Is
in
it
the
a
pit
big chunk of change?
for a team like Alpine? Yeah.
For the country of France?
For Renault, yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like it's a lot. It goes against the cost cap.
Okay.
But anyway, they got fined for sending Gasly off with 3 wheels.
Yeah, they did.
There's something to be. I saw somebody on Twitter was making a joke. French their flag is called the tricolor. They wear the tri-corner hats and they race a tricycle.
They dropped a guillotine blade on that back right axle.
It was pretty funny to watch that car just start to roll off, and the poor pit lane guy just grabs the tire and just like falls on him.
Yeah. Those tires are big.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't look big, but they're heavy.
They're heavy,
dense.
They're dense.
Yeah.
Very, very dense.
Yeah.
And kudos to Pierre for calling after they got it all set up and he left the pit, for calling back and like, hey, is the mechanic okay?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Good on
was he
him for
hurt?
that.
Did I hurt him? I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
They told me to go, so I went.
Right. Yeah. If I remember right, the commentators were saying that one of the jacks dropped the car,
Yes.
which to a driver, you feel that that drop and you're like, oh, time to go.
Yep.
So understandable, unfortunate, but understandable why Pierre would think, "Oh, time to go." Meep,
Yep.
meep. So
Yeah, and it was, I don't know, it's just another nail in the coffin that is the running gag of Alpine.
Yeah.
being Alpine.
and Alpine has gone out and said that they have no intention of selling.
And I don't know why. Is it a pride thing? National
Maybe.
thing?
Yeah, maybe that shady council of Frenchmen that we had been theorizing about just said no.
The secret cabal of baguette eaters.
Yeah. No,
Sacre bleu.
no sale for
We
you.
were already banned in China. Now we're about to get banned in France.
For real.
Oh, man. Well, I think that'll do it for the tinfoil hat party. I don't think we had anything else out of that one. But after the fun we had from the last one, I think we're going to roll into our next new fun segment of driver versus driver.
Yeah.
So,
Can you still hear me okay? I sound weird to myself. I don't know if it's...
No, I think you're good.
Okay, cool. All right. So, would you like the driver hat or the activity hat?
I'll do the driver hat this time.
Driver hat? Okay, let me see. I think that's it. Yeah. Here's your driver hat.
Alrighty. All right. Pick
And
a
for those who are unfamiliar, basically we are drawing 2 driver names out of a hat, and then we're pulling out one activity, and we just debate on who would be better at this particular activity.
Yep. So we have Lance Stroll
Oh boy.
and Checo Perez.
Checo Perez versus Lance Stroll, and the activity is horseback riding.
I feel like Checo has the patience to handle a horse.
Yes, I think he has a lot of vaquero hidden somewhere inside of him. Or what are those? Yes, vaqueros. Yeah, Mexican cowboys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he has that hidden deep somewhere inside of him, and he can just pull that out for riding a horse.
I can see that. Yeah, and he's just we saw it in the race. He's just a very patient man.
Yeah,
I feel like Lance is the kind of guy that would, hit a horse so hard that it just rides off and bucks him off and throws him into a tree or something.
what would Lance rear-ending a horse look like?
I'm going to have to put that through an AI image generator. We're going to see what that looks like.
Man might lose some teeth.
Yeah, my money's on Checo on that one.
Yep, same here.
All right, going again. We've got Danny Ricciardo
Danny Rick.
and, oh boy, Yuki Tsunoda.
Oh boy,
The V-Carb boys.
All right, V-Carb Showdown. The activity is planning a date. I'm going to go Danny.
Depends on where you are. Like, I feel like if we're in Japan, Yuki's gonna take that girl out and he's gonna cook. Like, he's gonna make her dinner, and it's gonna be this like world class thing.
Probably. But I don't know. I feel like Danny is able to... How do I say? He's probably able to come up with a broader variety
That's true.
of dates to change things up. He can probably change the date up depending on the girl, that kind of thing. I just think he's more of a personable guy. Which
He's got that Australian charisma.
that too. But I just think he's able to kind of read a person better.
That's fair.
I think.
Yeah.
I think so.
He's got a better sense of humor than Yuki does.
That too. Yeah. Yuki is funny, but he's also really quiet.
And crass.
Yeah. Which I don't know. I think that that can go one way or the other depending on who the date is with.
That's true.
So yeah, I'm going with Ricky.
Are either of them dating at the moment anyway?
I
even
don't know. I honestly have no idea. I don't think Ricardo is.
Yeah, I don't think Yuki is either. If they are, they have whoever it is hasn't come to the paddock at all. That
Yeah.
they've shown, because they do usually a pretty good job of showing off who's with who and that kind of thing. And
Right, yeah.
Haven't seen anything on the wives and girlfriends front
Yeah.
from those two, but yeah, I think you're right. I think Ricardo would definitely
Yeah. So
have
we're
a
2 for
broader
2.
range of things to do on a date.
Yeah.
So I want to see him do the what was that one that Lando did, the chicken chop date?
Oh yeah.
That was hilarious.
That was so awkward. I felt so bad for Lando.
Lando was like scared.
He was so intimidated by that girl.
That girl, she was awesome.
Yeah. That was hilarious.
Definitely worthwhile.
Yeah.
All right, going again here. We have Esteban Ocon.
What's the ball? Ocon.
Esty Bestie.
Don't say that again.
Danny Ricciardo again.
Really? Okay. Esteban versus Ricardo.
Doing
Snowboarding.
definitely Ocon.
Yeah. I'm going to go Ocon as well.
I don't think Danny's got the coordination for snowboarding.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. World-class athlete. Kiki, but still. Sweat. Anyway.
It's real sweat.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think Ocon's probably going to be a little more coordinated for snowboarding.
Yeah. Well, you grew up in France. You've got
the Alps
mountains where you can actually do that kind of thing.
Yeah, you can't really do that in Australia.
No, you cannot. So, yeah, definitely my money's on Ocon on that one.
Yeah, 3 for 3. This is a stark contrast compared to last episode.
I know. Let's do one more.
Yeah.
One more for kicks and grins. We have Oscar Piastri
Oscar Pastry.
versus Carlos Sainz.
Okay. The old teammates.
Yep. No, they haven't been teammates.
Oh, no, I'm thinking Lando Norris. Yeah, duh.
The other McLaren driver.
Duh. Yeah, my bad.
Carlando.
All right, so we got Oscar Piastri versus Carlos Sainz playing chess.
Sainz.
Yeah.
He's a smooth operator and a master tactician.
He's a master strategist.
I
We
bet
have
that
we
man's
have
good
seen
at
this.
chess.
Yeah. Nothing really against Piastri. I don't know. He's a quiet guy, but I don't think chess is really going to be his thing.
Nah.
Yeah. I honestly, somebody would put a chessboard in front of him. He would play and quietly play long, but once he's done, he just walks away.
Yeah.
He
He probably plays for fun, but not has a deep knowledge of strategy. Whereas Sainz, I'm sure,
he's not thinking 10 moves ahead. Or
no.
anything like
Whereas
that.
Sainz,
Yeah.
I'm sure, probably has a pretty good bucket of strategies playing quite a bit. I bet his dad is a big chess player. and
Yeah,
probably learned from
I'm
his
sure that between him and his dad playing chess together, that he could retain a lot of that if it's the case.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
So that concludes our driver versus driver segment. Definitely a fun one.
Yes.
It's fun to think about, if nothing else.
It is fun to just theorize these sort of things. Yeah.
Well, any saved rounds? Anything to cover?
No,
at the end?
I think that we've covered both the previous and upcoming Grand Prix pretty well.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll be doing a new segment solo on YouTube and Twitch this coming Friday. We're debuting a new thing called Box Socks, where I'm just going to cover a few just of the random little details about Formula One that aren't widely covered. Why a weekend is structured the way it is, what the FIA is, and what the different tire compounds are. So if you're interested, definitely tune in this coming Friday, shooting for around noon Central Standard Time on our YouTube channel and Twitch page. So yeah definitely chime in.
This will be a good opportunity for people to have their questions answered.
Yeah. Feel free to send in any questions you want, either live on air or you can message us on any of our socials.
Yeah.
Email the Pit Strategy Podcast at gmail.com. However you want to.
It could be us. It could be about the podcast. It could be about Formula One itself.
Yep.
I mean, sky's the limit.
Literally anything. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you. But yeah, definitely tune in Friday, and we'll be covering all of that. We still plan on doing the Monaco sim racing for the Monaco Grand Prix at the end of May. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, other than that, I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think we're done.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you all for listening. Be sure to follow us on all of our socials to keep up with all the updates. And yeah, we really appreciate you tuning in and listening.
Absolutely.
More to come. We'll catch you on the next race. Yeah, that wraps up this one. Thanks for listening again. I'm Jeff.
And I met.
And yeah, we'll see you on the next race. Pit strategy complete.